off of the fourth quarter of 2008 for the fourth quarter of 2009 are percentage-wise going to look better because they were just so bad last year. It's going to be easy to beat. I mean, it's like the old adage for a school kid: never get straight A's your first year in high school. Well, failing everything, which was basically the fourth quarter 2000, it's really easy to start passing some classes at that point. And that's effectively, so I think what we'll see in 2010 is a very slow, because that will start to bring back consumer confidence a little bit. And people, they'll have shook out a bit, it's the uncertainty, it's the fear of not knowing where you're going to work and what your job's going to be that you're holding back. Well, people will probably have that mostly figured out and worked out. And you'll see a 1% to 2% slight increase, I think. And it's going to be a slow recovery. It's not going to be fast. And the reason for this is we're dealing with a real estate bubble. And the last real estate bubble we had here in Arizona, the last big one, was back in '86. Tax Reform Act of '86 took out the legs from the S&L industry. It was primarily a commercial real estate bubble, but a bubble nonetheless. We are in year 3 of our bubble. The '86 bubble lasted 7 years before we were fully recovered. And so from '86, it wasn't until really '92, '93 that you saw the market really return to what it was prior to. And so from an overall economic standpoint, we've got probably 4 more years before we're back. And from a state budgeting perspective, we're basically looking at, it'll be the 2014 budget before we have tax collections equivalent to what they were last year. From a state side, yes.
Bit of an outcry from the public and maybe the legislature on, well, we're just collecting too much property tax, we need to give some money back to the population. And I don't remember if they did cut some property tax. I know that was kind of the push. But then going back to your previous statement, you kind of had foreseen that there was going to be a downturn in the economy. Did they not foresee that this was a bubble and they did cut taxes?
Well, on the state level, I know actually a lot about this because I sponsored the property tax piece. On the state side, the state has sales and income taxes already, and it does collect a property tax, or it used to, and will again most likely. In my opinion, of the 3 different ways of taxing, property taxes is the worst tax to collect, because property taxes go straight into the break-even point of businesses. You pay a property tax whether you're producing anything, employing anything, or doing anything. You're paying that property tax right off. So it goes into what we call fixed cost, or your break-even. Sales taxes you only pay when you're selling something, and income taxes you only pay when you're actually making money. Well, a lot of political subdivisions only have a property tax. The state has sales and income. We shouldn't be relying on property taxes because we have these other 2 sources. There are other political subdivisions, that's all they have is the property tax. We shouldn't be collecting from that pie because it's a limited pie. The state of Arizona is already the 4th highest commercial property tax rate in the nation. Most people don't realize this. We're right in the middle for residential, but we're the 4th highest. We used to be the 2nd highest. And if we don't start pulling back on that, have you ever wondered why we have a hard time attracting big capital-intensive industries? I mean, if you think about it, we don't have automakers, you don't have large manufacturing. We attract a lot of call centers and financial because it's a desk and a computer and a telephone. Not a lot of capital invested there. Intel's the exception. You notice in a big plant, lots of equipment. Most people don't realize Intel doesn't pay the same property tax as everyone else does. They're in a special zone. Their property tax rate is half what everyone else is. So, for example, if you got a $100,000 home and you pay $100 in taxes, you convert that to commercial, it would be $250. Except Intel, their same $100,000, that would be $50, so it'd be half the residential rate. Well, I worked on the I actually sponsored the sales factory bill, helped to attract the latest fab that Intel here and save all, the plant and equipment that's there. And so as we were working through this project, we got it all done, had an opportunity to sit down with the senior vice president for Intel that does global site selection. So this guy, he was looking, we're not just competing against other states, we're competing with other countries. And I said, what would happen if your special zone went away and you were taxed at the same rate that every other commercial property in the state gets hit with? He said, we would not, in our industry, we couldn't afford to operate for another week. We would literally have to box up all the equipment and all the people and ship them off to another location and start back up. We would literally have to shut down because of the margins there. That break-even point hits in. So from the state perspective, my philosophy was, why are we collecting a property tax? Since we have this problem, when other jurisdictions absolutely have no other choice, they have to collect a property tax because that's the only tax they have, or it's one of the only ones they have. The state should get out of that business and leave that for the local governments that need it as a way to do it. And that's what we did. Unfortunately, that's going to come back next year. It's $250 million in automatic increase on property taxes. Where do I think the state's going to go on this? There's that big kind of public outcry on property taxes as the values were going up and the rates weren't coming down enough, they felt like they were being overtaxed. I think that cry is actually going to get worse now, not better. And I actually think we are set up for a huge backlash because what's going to happen is people who have seen their homes go up and up and up in value and then all of a sudden come back down and down and down, well, they saw their perceived tax rate bill go up when their home was twice as much. Now they see it drop half as much, and if their bill doesn't go down to half what it was before, which it's not, it can't. Operationally, it's going to be very difficult for that to happen. They're going to be really ticked off. I mean, I've got a retired aunt living on fixed income, and of course, a retirement right now, I mean, you've seen the 401ks, they look like 201ks these days. You're going to have a lot of people really upset. So I think we have a greater possibility of that property tax backlash than we even had during the housing bubble going up.
And I guess that's what I'm getting at. I mean, why was it so short-sighted? Why would you take it away knowing that, well, there's some way it's going to be part of it?
Well, this is part of my frustration, not just with the property tax system, but, well, first of all, we can be proud. We have the most complex property tax system on the planet, by the way. More difficult than anywhere else. It's not just the property tax system, it's the entire budgeting and spending processes of the state. There's literally nothing in statute that requires long-term planning. In fact, if anything, the process really punishes long-term planning. It does not reward it. For example, for a long time in the budgeting process, if you wanted your bill not to cost anything, all you had to do was start it 2 years from now. And then it didn't show up in this year's budget, so it didn't have a fiscal impact. And so it was kind of this nebulous thing. There's nothing, I got frustrated because we had $1 billion surplus back before the dot-com bubble in 9/11. And then we didn't have any money. And then we ended up with a $2 billion surplus. And then now we're at a $3 billion shortfall. What's this? We're constantly going up and down. And that's because there's not a system of saving in the good times for the down times. Let me provide an example. The personal financial planners, they say, what, you should have 3 to 4 months of reserves, right, in savings. Well, for the state of Arizona, for the general fund, it'd be about $3 to $4 billion. Now, the rainy day fund, at its height, only had $787 million. Now, that sounds like a lot of money. It would be great for me. I could live off that just fine. But not for the state. That's not enough in reserve for the state. And we can spend that in a week if it's the right week. And so the state, and even then, that was hard to get that $787 million in savings. In fact, when I first put the savings in, when we had the $2 billion surplus, I was finance chairman, got the line item in there to put the savings in. It was actually vetoed. Line item veto on the savings. So the second year, I said, let's put it in 3 places. Let's tell the governor about one of them. let's not tell the governor about the other two. And the governor's staff found 2 of the 3. And so the only reason we actually had 787 million and not 250 million was because we actually had to hide the fact that we were saving